Joining us now, Mary Trump, former President Donald Trump's niece. She's the host of the Mary Trump Show podcast and the author of the book, Too Much and Never Enough. Eddie Glaude remains with me on set. Mary Trump, this was like crawling through the desert, so thirsty, and reaching that sort of pond of possible relief, that here is something that might actually shore up our democracy from the daily assault. I have to ask first your reaction to that new interview that Josh Dawsey does with your uncle, whose only regret about the insurrection turned deadly is that he wasn't marching with them.
Yeah, as usual, nothing he says in that interview is the truth. But it's less about the content of the interview than the fact that it even happened. One of the reasons we are in worse shape than we were when Liz Cheney sat for her interview, as you mentioned, is because there has been no accountability. Democracy is literally on a knife's edge. And every day that passes, that Donald is allowed to continue to spread his lies, that the Republican Party he leads, which is a counter-majoritarian, anti-democratic party, they're able to, I guess you could say, keep their base riled up. Meanwhile, they're doing everything in their power to make sure that a lot of people in this country can vote in November. So Donald proves yet again that he's not to be trusted and that he doesn't care about this country or democracy. He's just happy he got away with it.
What do you think about the comments that he makes about talking to Jim Jordan and Kevin McCarthy and saying they're not secret? I mean, I heard that and hoped that someone was writing out a subpoena for those two gentlemen.
One would hope, for sure, because I have a feeling that a lot of the people directly involved in January 6th, have gotten complacent because it doesn't seem that anything's happening. Meanwhile, almost every time he opens his mouth, Donald's implicating somebody else. So what's troubling about those comments is, one, the flippancy with which he said it, as if it doesn't matter. And two, that he thinks that even if he is telling the truth about that, nothing will accrue to him. So it's just a continuation of the same trend we've seen that you've been covering. It feels like forever now, Nicole.
It does. It feels like forever because of what you just said. I mean, no one has held him accountable. And I think, to your point, that he acts as though no one will hold him accountable because no one held him accountable. Who do you blame for that?
That's kind of a complicated question because, as you say, it has been going on forever. It's sort of a disease that keeps metastasizing, and nobody is doing anything to stop it. Currently, I blame the Republican Party for continuing to look to him for approval, for continuing to bow down to him, which is absurd, and continuing to perpetuate his lies and failing time after time to protect the American people, because clearly right now the Republican Party, as it is currently constituted, is only interested in hanging on to power, no matter how illegitimately.
There is a question that I have had on my mind, and you're the only person that can answer it. How does the bizarre sycophantic bubble split along Jared and Ivanka sitting for hours-long interviews with the 1-6 committee, while Peter Navarro, races down to Mar-a-Lago to shove, the hot dogs wrapped in a bun into his mouth and high-five Donald Trump about being held in contempt? How does the family end up on the other side of Navarro in terms of being responsive to an invitation to cooperate?
Honestly, I think it has everything to do with where the various parties think their future lies. I think I've said before that if Ivanka and Jared feel that continuing to support and defend Donald won't work out well for them, they will throw him under the bus. So I think right now their mission is, and I'm not saying that's what happened, it would be a last resort, certainly, but I think their mission for the time being is to appear measured and reasonable.
ask you about your uncle. He seems like at any moment he could just trot out the results of his MoCA test again. You know, banana, tomato, man, woman, tamale. I mean, how does he seem to you?
I try really hard not to pay too much attention to him, quite honestly, because I'm trying to keep my blood pressure down. But I honestly think a lot of what's happening is a reaction to the fact that his world has shrunk considerably, and as has his ability to get attention, which is why every once in a while you'll see him say something outlandish that will get a lot of play in the media, and which is why he jumps at the chance to be interviewed by the Washington Post.
What's your advice then for how to deal with him? Should he be ignored? I mean, he's a threat to our democracy, so we can't ignore everything he does. But what is your advice to how to treat him?
No, we cannot ignore him, and it's horrifying that we have to say that. But again, we have the Republican Party to thank for it. Republican leadership had so many off-ramps away from him, and the fact that they did not take January 6th to be one is an incredible indictment against them. What we need to do is pay attention to who in his orbit is making moves, who is continuing to seek his advice, if you want to call it that, to seek his approval, to seek his endorsements. And more than anything, it doesn't necessarily have directly to do with him, but we need to help people understand just what is at stake in this coming election in 2022. And help people understand as well that the question really isn't, is Donald going to run in 2024? The question really is, should he be allowed to? And figure out a way to make that stick. Because otherwise we're just legitimizing him in the same way he's been legitimized by the lack of accountability.
I want to ask you about your efforts, and I want to read a little bit from the announcement. The mission of the Democracy Defense Fund is threefold. One, it's to focus on key House and Senate races by funding both at-risk incumbents and Democratic challengers with the best chance of flipping red seats. Two, to invest in local and state races with electoral significance. Three, to support existing organizations in their efforts to protect the voting rights of all Americans. These are the kinds of things, except for the first one, that we used to do in young democracies in other countries. I read this, and all I could think of was, oh my God, this is what we desperately need here. Explain.
Well, yeah, it is a sad commentary on how far we've fallen that such a thing is necessary. And I'm not at all suggesting that there aren't other organizations doing extraordinary work out there, which is why one thing we will be doing is supporting such organizations, because there's no need to do the work twice, right? So we want to be laser focused on candidates and races that have serious electoral consequences. For example, AG and Secretary of State races at the local level, people who have an impact on how elections are held and how results are presented. So one of the things we're fighting against too, and another huge reason I think that the Democracy Defense Fund is necessary, is because people don't, I think, quite get the enormity of what is at stake here. Part of the reason for that is that the Biden administration has been treated like a normal administration that followed another normal administration, when nothing could be farther from the truth. So we need to help people understand not just that, but that we have right now one party, the Democratic Party, that is pro-democracy, and another party, the Republican Party, that is not. So if we can help people see the extent to which Republicans do not want most Americans to vote through voter suppression, through extreme gerrymandering, and through what I think is the most troubling thing, voter subversion, then they're also going to get away with things they shouldn't be getting away with. So people need to be informed. And part of that is also helping them know which races to focus on, because there are so many people running.
One of the things that I think bolsters, I felt that way since 2015 when Donald Trump it was so clear from the very beginning of the Republican primary that he had just captured something with the Republican base, and then he proceeded to wipe out 17, I won't call them all normal, but more normal kind of Republican candidates. And something that always has struck me is that he benefits so much from asymmetry. And I think what you're describing is, he was treated as sort of a normal ex-president, and this president now, we want to level set and return to, holding him accountable as though he just took over from a normal Republican who he disagreed with about healthcare and taxes. No, he took over from someone who wanted to pull America out of NATO. And I wonder, as you watch the war rage in Ukraine, what you think about the damage your uncle has done.
It's devastating. And one of the things that's most devastating about it is that the Republican Party, which supported him and his Putin worship all along the way, up until about a month ago, are trying to whitewash that record by pretending that Donald wasn't impeached for trying to undermine the Ukrainian democracy. One of the reasons that Ukraine wasn't in a better position when Russia illegally invaded them was because of the delay caused by Donald deliberately and illegally. So for the Republican Party to turn around and pretend that they've been pro-Ukraine and anti-Putin all along is another problem, because it's just another way of normalizing horrific anti-American, anti-democratic behavior.